Alright, so let's go back into our system view and do a display ACL all. So make sure that we have no ACL here. And first, I'm going to configure user interface VTY04 to configure our telnet. So I'm going to do a set authentication password cipher Huawei. Okay, that will be my password. I'm going to allow the user to have full privilege. So I'm going to put the user privilege level. So anything from 0 to 15, I give them the highest level. Alright, so I'm going to do a testing here on R3. Then I'm going to do a telnet. If I'm going to source from 3.3 telnet to 1.1 with the password of Huawei, I am in router 1. Okay, so router 3 successful telnet to router 1, and from router 1 to confirm you can do a display users. So I am confirming now that I have a client with a source of 3.3.3 telnet into my routers. Okay, and I can, before I actually do the ACL, I need to disconnect the user. So we are going to use a command called free user interface VTY, and I know that is using VTY0, so I'm going to say that free user interface VTY0, and I'm going to disconnect the user. So the user is already kicked out. So if I do a display user, no more. So this is my console. So if I confirm again in R3, you can see that from R1 I jump back to R3. Okay, so that is the confirmation, and now we are going to do the ACL. Alright, so go back to the system view. I'm going to configure the ACL. Now as you can see from here, we can have a name ACL or we can have a number ACL. If it's a number ACL, we are going to use either the basic ACL that is from 2000 to 2999. We can use the advanced ACL, which is from 3000 to 3999, or L2 ACL, which is from 4000 to 4999. So for my demonstration here, I'm going to use a number ACL, which is 2000. And you also notice that I can use a mesh order. Now early on I did mention to you that if you never configure any mesh order, the mesh order will be based on the rule base. If you do want to override the rule base, then you have to configure the mesh order to use in auto. Alright, now I'm going to use the normal default, which is based on the configuration first. Okay, so I just do a ACL 2000. That's the default based on the rules order. I'm going to say that rules deny source coming from 3, and I'm going to use a wildcard. Now because this is a single host, I'm going to use a wildcard of 0. Okay, there you go. And we know that if let's say anything that is not being matched, it will be denied. Now if I do not have any other rules, by default everything will be denied. So I just to confirm again, display ACL all, and just now I did not configure the rules 5, and you can see that the step is 5, and that is automatic. Okay, we can change the step as well. So I have here deny source 3.3.3. So if I'm going to source from 3 telnet to 1, it will get denied, and any other source will also get denied as well, because I have no permit statement. Just to confirm here, if I'm going to do a telnet -a 333 to 111, okay, wow, you can see that it's permitted. Don't be too excited. Remember I told you that the ACL is a filter, alright, but it will only affect if you apply the filter. So in this case, it's actually going in. The reason because that we have not enforced it yet. So let me quit from here. Okay, go back to R3. As you can see that I do have ACL, but I haven't implement this ACL. So I need to go back into the user interface. Sorry, user interface VTY04. I'm going to say that ACL, and my ACL is 2000. I'm going to implement it as an inbound. So now we are going to test one more time. Alright, so please remember that by default ACL is just a matching tools. If you want to filter, you need to make sure that you applied it. As you can see that now it fell. Alright, so you can wait until it time out, or you can do a control with a square bracket. And I failed to connect. If I'm going to use 3.3.0.3 to telnet in, I will also fail as well. Okay, so if I go back to R1, display ACL all, as you can see that I have two matches over here. Okay, and I do not have any permit statement, so anything that is not being matched under the telnet, it will get denied unless if I have a permit rules. So in R3 it will fail. Let me stop it, and I'm going to create an ACL 2000. Okay, I'll go back to the ACL view, display this. You can see that I have a rules 5 over here. I can simply put the rules number 1 or 2 if I want to insert the rules in front, or I want to have the permit statement. I just said that rules permit source any. Okay, display this. As you can see that they will automatically create 10 for me. I use a command called rules, and I never specify the rules number. Okay, so I can just simply put the permit, because this is a basic ACL, so it will know that this is a source, and source any, you don't need to specify the source any, so this will automatically be truncated. So if I go back into R3, I'm going to use a 333. As you can see that it's still not able because it's being blocked. Okay, as you can see that the statistic is growing, but if I'm going to use a source of 3303, I will be managed to log in. So I managed to log in now, and when I do a display ACL all, as you can see that this is under the permit statement. Okay, so that will be on the basic ACL on how you can do the ACL under the telnet. So next I'm going to show you how you can use the ACL order, but this time we are going to use in auto. I do a display ACL all. As you can see that now I have the basic ACL 2000. There are two rules inside there. I can just do a undo ACL all. Alright, so you see that deleting operation has finished. I can specify one ACL, alright, but just want to show you that the fastest way to clean up your ACL will be undo ACL all. So I do a display ACL all, you can see that it's gone. So let me reconstruct back the ACL now. So I'm going to say ACL 2000. Now I'm going to mesh auto. Alright, the matching order now is auto. Just now the default one is using a config. Alright, so now I'm going to say that let's do a rules permit. Okay, then I said that rules deny source 3333, and I put a 0. Okay, now as you can see that I put in the permit first, then later I key in the deny. Now what will happen over here is if the matching order is auto, remember the order here is that they will always go for the longest match. So when I do a display ACL all, as you can see here, regardless the order on how you actually key in, because the permit statement is actually very general, so it will put into below, and this is more specific. Alright, so if I'm going to configure one more rules, let's say I'm going to say that rules deny 3.3.0.0 00255.255. Okay, and since you never specify any rules, by default if it's under the config mode it will go into rules 15, but since I'm using an auto mode now, again they will going to look for the depth. Alright, depth first. Okay, so I missed out the source here. There you go. So when I do a display this, as you can see that this is the deepest, this is the second deepest, and this is the general. So this is what we call the matching order based on the auto. All right, so the order will be actually based on who have the matching that having the deepest match. Now let's go into the R2, and we are going to do a telnet to. Okay, so in fact I can just do a telnet here because I'm not using from tree, and you can see that I will able to telnet directly. Okay, and if let's say I go to number 3, regardless on whichever source that I'm using now, because remember that earlier on I have a deny 3300, so regardless on whichever IP address I'm going in, unless that is not 33, assuming that I'm using a 10.23, it will be successful. You can see that I fail here. If I'm going to use a source of a direct interface 10 using the 1023, it should be able to go in. As you can see from here, I'm just using a physical interface. You're able to go in, and when I do a display users, you can see that I'm using 1023. And if I do a display ACL all, it has been permitted. First mesh was using R2, the second mesh currently I'm using 1023. Okay, so this is important. Okay, the statistic actually show you how many packet is being matched. All right, so next I'm going to show you if let's say we are going to use the ACL with the packet filtering. And for this, we are going to use a different method. Now this time, we are going to configure the packet filtering in R2 rather than in R1.